Welcome to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast, the show for women who are seeking more fulfillment in life and simply not getting it from their current situation. We focus specifically on careers, but hey, we spend a lot of time in our careers, so making changes here will definitely create an impact in your overall happiness. I'm your host, Simone Morris, and my mission is to empower women to succeed. I believe that in order to powerfully own your career, you must decide and claim that you want to sit in the driver's seat. You must know that you deserve better and be willing to not only do the requisite work, but be willing to go out on a limb to ensure your success. Each episode focuses on profiling a leader who is clearly demonstrating ownership of their career. Join me and my guests as we explore career journeys and bring you actionable strategies to use to get into the driver's seat for your career. Because ultimately, your career is your responsibility. Let's get into the show. Betty Hines is an entrepreneur, speaker, business mentor, and coach. She has also served as a corporate executive at a multi-billion-dollar Fortune 100 company for many years. I'm so pleased to have Betty as a guest on the podcast. She has a wealth of information that she will share with our listeners, really about soaring in their careers and how to be strategic. Really want to dive in with Betty on how to be strategic in owning your career. Betty, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let us just jump right into this interview. Tell our listeners a little bit more about who you are and your journey, just the route to your journey.
Okay, sure. I would brand myself as an advocate for women business owners, entrepreneurs, and for women executives. And I do that, and I'm passionate about it because I've had a chance to participate in all scopes of it. I was a C-suite executive in corporate America, and now I'm an entrepreneur. So I would consider myself a woman advocate. My journey has been right out of college, worked for a life insurance company, a Fortune 500 company, and was a junior brokerage consultant. And from there, I went to another insurance company, property and casualty company, and was an underwriter. And that's been pretty much my career. I've been an underwriter to the day I die. It was when I moved, in fact, in that journey with this is not something that is so prevalent now, but back when I was in corporate America, and in order to advance, that you had to be considered mobile. And I say that to say this, I had to relocate 8 different times, which is probably after that I became divorced. And then I moved out to Maryland. And that was part of a company here based in Maryland that was 100 years old, and part of the turnaround with the understanding that we were preparing it for sale. But spending all that time helping other people make money and being profitable, my now husband and a couple other partners decided, hey, look, let's do this for ourselves. So we decided that we would do that. And my career went from working at this insurance company during the day, and that's never a 9 to 5 if you're in management, which I was, to working on our strategy and business plan for owning our own insurance company, property and casualty company, not agency. So I did a exit out of the insurance industry for about 3 years and worked for a large well-known sneaker company because they were global, and I wanted to have that experience because that's where a lot of insurance companies put their reinsurance, is like places like Bermuda. So I wanted to have that familiarity with how they did their business. So did that, and then we traveled back to New York, back to Chicago, and we had our first raised our capital. Our first initial infusion was 10 million. That sounds like a lot of money, but that's surplus for the insurance industry. And ultimately had the opportunity, seized it. We raised over 30 million for surplus during that stint. So that's pretty much my career. And then I got the bug. We spun the business off in 2005, and I became and still am, a business strategist. I'm a consultant. And now I'm doing what I do now. I still facilitate women groups. I now have mine, which I'll talk about a little later, called W.E.W Women Elevating Women.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, where does the passion for strategy come from?
Well, I would give that to my upbringing in corporate America. We call it the corporate blue. I won't name the company, but they were very big in strategy. In fact, their executives, their officers, always had to take a 2-week course at Northwestern Kellogg School uh, in strategic planning. And those were the day that they talked about Porter, that he was talking about strategy, and that's before IT technology was really big into corporations. So I've always been strategic, and you have to be strategic if you're in underwriting. So that's been in my blood. And I always say that people, I do that now as a business strategist. I help women, be them in their business career or in their business, put together a strategic plan. Because if you don't know where you're going, you don't know how to get there. You have to map it out.
Well, let's jump right to resources then for the professionals or those that are still in corporate or otherwise listening and wanting to know how they can build that strategic acumen. What are some tools or resources that you recommend to build that muscle?
There is out something very simple. Now, if you're going for big dollars, when I say a SWOT analysis, I mean, you're talking about a really thick analysis. But for yourself, in corporate America, something that I've always done, you still need to do a SWOT analysis on yourself. That's something that we don't do. It's easy to look at another business and do a SWOT analysis on another business, but we do need to do that very similar assessment, your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So I did that. I also knew in doing that journey, I saw where the skill gaps were. And that's important to know because you're not going to have all the skills, and that's all right because somebody else will have them. You'll know that you want to put somebody on your team, particularly if you're in corporate America, who has those strengths. So that's where you do your SWOT analysis, and it's called a one-page business plan. If you take a look at it, with the he just recently passed about 6 months ago, Jim Horan. He's the founder. But there's a lot of simple business plans, strategic business plans that you should take a look at. And that will work well for you and your professional career as well as your entrepreneur world, because you do need to map out where you want to go.
Absolutely. Talk to us about the T, the threats. So as you're looking at your career and thinking about owning it, I think the others, the strengths, weakness, opportunities, are easier to land on. But talk to us, what should you be thinking about from a threat standpoint and factoring into owning your career?
I would say one of the biggest threats is yourself.
Mm.
That is true in corporate America, and it's true as an entrepreneur. You work too much in your business and not on your business. So, and you work too much in trying to do this and trying to do, but you need to step back out after you do your analysis and see where you have some strengths and some weaknesses. And maybe it's financials. Maybe you need to have a better understanding of the P&L. Then take a course or sit down with somebody and let them show you that if you need to build that up into your repertoire, into your toolkit. So that is the biggest one, is yourself. The other thing I would say is that people have a tendency to get wrapped up in, I'm going to say, position authority, and that's the title. They want to get to the next level. They want to be a director. They want to be a VP. It's that title. But while you're busy climbing up that corporate scale with positions and title, you have to keep in mind, you need to have that moral position, that moral authority. Because if the individuals don't feel you have that morality, you're looking behind and you're leading yourself. There's no one there. So you have to have a nice balance there. Yes, you want to get to the next level, but morals, morality, that authority, to me, weighs far greater than the position authority.
Wonderful. Talk to us about your formula. As we look back at your career, you talked about being in the C-suite and handling millions and millions of dollars and moving around. So you're doing things right, so talk to us about your formula for owning your career.
My formula right now, and I've toned it down, is you don't need to be a perfectionist. It's okay to make a mistake. But I always found myself, regardless of the level that I raised to in corporate America, as being the first. I was the first African American in this. I was the first African American in that. So you feel like I put that burden on myself to set a certain expectation. But I think for the most part, what you need to do in terms of your career path is to do some career mapping. Where do you really want to go with your career? So that's important for you to understand where you want to be. And it's almost like when you're doing a business analysis, you do a business analysis on yourself. Uh, do you want to be the multimillionaire? Or do you want to be the C-suite executive that has all the perks and benefits, the bonuses, the stock options? So you have to really look internally to yourself and to say, what's going to make yourself, what's going to make me happy? Because money doesn't always make people happy. So you really have to do a self-analysis.
Absolutely, absolutely. That totally makes sense. So in terms of, just advice, building on that and what you've defined as your formula, is there specific advice that you would add to that for those wanting to own their careers?
Yes, read. There are many books, and be in a reading club. In fact, I just received something this morning regarding they called it a book club for quarantine, a quarantine book club. So you have to stay knowledgeable, and I'm always reading a couple books at a time. And there's a lot of good books out there, and you can read what people have written down as an assessment. So I'm reading a great book right now that's perfect given what we're going through right now, and it's called Blue Ocean Shift. I had read the Blue Ocean Strategy about 7-8 years ago, but just so happens 2 years ago they wrote the Blue Ocean Shift, and it talks about how to not swim in the red ocean. You want to swim in the blue ocean and make your competition irrelevant. So it's those sorts of books that get your mind thinking and thinking about not necessarily how to be the competition, but be the competition. So always engage in some sort of learning.
Yeah, I'm with you there, Betty, because I think lifelong learning is something that's near and dear to my heart, certainly. But most of the guests that have come through here have mentioned reading and staying in the learning zone in order to grow. And I love that there's a quarantine book club, because most people, we're seeing the quarantine D-nice or things that are going on social media, but the book clubs, you might have to look for them or just invest in it yourself. Lots of learning opportunities available right now.
I would like to add one more thing, and this is something that I've incorporated and I've been sharing with my members and my clients, is we don't take time for self. And this is where I have to be disciplined. I said, take at least 45 minutes. First I said an hour, then I said, for me, that's a little bit unrealistic. So let's go with 45 minutes and just take time to think. Play some calm music, whatever relaxes you, but just take time to think. And you will be amazed how rejuvenated you will be after that time period. But take time for yourself to think and exercise. Those things are very important just for lifelong success, and if you want to be on top of your game.
Yeah, I agree. I do need to do a better job about exercise, but yeah, I'm fully on board with that thinking. I think that if you don't make time for it, it's easy to just be in a state of reactive, just reacting to fires or things that's going on and not, I think that ties back to the strategy conversation we were having earlier. You need to think in order to come up with your strategy.
Right. And since we don't have time, there's no hair salons open for us to get our nails done. You've got that time to think.
Nice. It's true. Although, I was on a Zoom call last night with my family, and I was hearing about the virtual hairdresser who is teaching how to do your hair. So people are pivoting. Lots of innovation coming from this time.
Yes.
I want to go back to something you said earlier when you were talking about your journey, and that is, you mentioned that you moved about, I think you said 8 different times. And I think in order to embrace opportunities that come to you, you have to have some sort of appreciation for risk. Can you talk to us about how you have handled risk in your career, and if there's any advice around being appreciative of risk for reward. Talk to us about that, please.
Um, I grew up in a very small town. So I was anxious when I graduated. I wanted to go to the biggest university you could think of because I always sat next alphabetically by the same person uh, from kindergarten to high school. So to be just a number was great. Um, and that was a risk, but that was one that I wanted to take on. But as far as risk, sometimes you don't think and you're not prepared. I wasn't prepared for some of my moves because corporately they would call when you said you were mobile, they would call you into the office and say, "Hey, look, you've been promoted to here," and you'd have like 48 hours to pack and go, and you would be flying back and forth, but you just left like that pretty abruptly. So I think now that I've gone through that movement, um, I can weigh some good and some bad, but I always try to see the good. I thought to myself, like, oh my gosh, my kids are young. They're going from this school to that school to the other school. Uh, but the risk taken there is that they are very social. I have one that is really an introvert, but he knows how to be an extrovert out in public. You get to meet a lot of different people. You get to learn about a lot of different cultures. So those are risks you want to take a look at in terms of how is that going to fulfill me personally. Certainly want to take a look at it and how is it going to fulfill my career. But also always bear in mind, you can always be replaced. So you have to assess, is this risk, is this where they're asking me to go? Am I going to be okay if something does not work out right and I'm still here? So you always have to evaluate it on your own personal needs. If you always put their needs forward, you're going to run into some problems. You have to take a look at it. Even though you said yes, I remember one time saying no, because back then I was not going down south into like Jackson, Mississippi, but they were burning cross. So I said no. But you have to weigh, what is the benefit to me? How am I going to grow? How are the people that are coming with me, how are they going to grow? How are they going to develop? So these are things that you have to weigh that are very important. And especially if you don't have a support system. Do they have the area have where you can have a support system? And I'm speaking for women. Men, not trying to dismiss what their responsibilities are, but usually when you have a move like that, the burden falls on the spouse, and the spouse being the woman. So you have to take a look at it. And when you're a single parent, you really have to take a look at, your support system. Do they have daycare? Do they have childcare? And once you do your checklist, then you say, okay, I'm going to do, these things are here, and not everything's going to be there. And then you take a look at it and say, okay, what's the advantage for me and my family by taking this next leap? Because it all is a leap of faith.
Yeah, I think that's brilliant, and something that really stuck out for me and resonated for me that I do want to draw attention to is you said you can always be replaced. And I think sometimes we forget that and we get lost in whatever it is in our work, and we don't realize that. But I think it's interesting to stop and pause and remind ourselves that we do need that SWOT analysis that you talked about before. We do need to be strategic. We do need to embrace risk, but we also need to remember that we can be replaced.
Yes, yes. The how great thou art syndrome. Never think that you're the best thing since sliced bread. There's always someone else that's right behind you that's chomping at the bit to get your slot. So you have to keep a balance and not to have too high. You want to feel good about your success, and you should, but keep it balanced.
Yeah, yeah. It's just been so much valuable nuggets that you shared, and I still am curious from a strategy standpoint, just as that's a theme through the interview, that I think, does that come from your parents or someone that you admired growing up, or it has to be poured into you and then nurtured? Where does that?
This way, the strategy had to be my mother, who is still living. She'll be 95 in July.
Nice.
But she raised 6 kids. And my father was military, so we traveled all over the world. So she had to be very strategic in a rank, because we were like boom, bam, right behind each other in terms of age. She had to be very strategic. And so when we came back to the States, she managed for all of us to go to college, scholarships, funding, what have you. And then after we went to college, she went back to school and she was in her 50s and she graduated. And then she also worked on some her master's as well. So that was all strategic. That just doesn't happen. It's the grace of God as well. But you have to think, and I stopped doing a 5-year plan. That I've trashed that long ago. I do like a 1 to 3 year plan, and it might be a 1 to 2 year plan, depending on the circumstances and where you are in your career. I mean, if your company is stable, that's all well and good. But then with a stability, people are being bought out all the time. There's, M&A. So I do a 1 to 3 year, and I visit it every year. And then there's nothing wrong with making adjustments every quarter. But you have to keep your eye on the prize and just remember that you're the prize.
I'm telling you, so many titles have popped up as you're speaking through the interview. I'm writing to myself different titles for your episode. But if you had to give a title to your the body of your career work, what would it be?
I have always been, and this is my passion to this day, a woman who elevates others. That's where I get my joy. I get my joy in seeing others succeed. And I succeed right behind them, but I focus on the individuals. I focus on the team. So I consider myself a woman elevator, someone who elevates others.
I love that. I have thoroughly enjoyed getting to know you, and I feel like I want to meet your mom. What a wonderful story. I come from a single mom of 6, and so we have that in common, and I know about that diligence and strategy. So and I think it's interesting to look at the ties, because you mentioned your father was in the military and that you moved around a lot, and then you mentioned you moved around a lot with your family as well. So I'm glad I stayed curious to kind of understand where that came from for you.
Yes. That's nothing for us to take a move.
Yeah. Tell our listeners, if they would like to stay connected with you after this episode, Betty, how can they reach out to you?
I am on LinkedIn. I'm on all the social medias, but the best way is info@bettyhines.com. That's info@bettyhines.com. And I'm also launching, the first one is going to be May 20th, and I'm going to be doing them once a month. I'm having what it's called, because I have some global partners, like in Brussels and Turkey and London and Japan, Singapore. So I'm doing what is called on Wednesdays. It will be the second Wednesday of every month. But this month is going to be May 20th. And that's called W.E.W Wake Up Wednesdays. And it's going to be early. It's going to be like at 7 a.m. to accommodate the different time zones. 7 to 8, it's just an hour. And then in the evening, it's going to be W.E.W Wired Wednesdays. And the W being for Women Elevating Women. And every other month, we're going to involve the men, because the men said they felt left out, and I'm about diversity and inclusion. But we have those conversations. That I do games, and it's really about 10, 15 minutes of information that can help them personally and professionally.
I love that. How did you sound out WOO? Because I listened to the acronym. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
When I was working and putting it together, I just said, whoo.
I love it.
And I said, my son and daughter helped me go, that's it, WOW, W-E-W.
Fantastic. Well, it has been my absolute pleasure to have you as a guest on the podcast. I learned a lot, and I feel sure that our listeners globally are going to get so many nuggets from this episode. So thank you so much, Betty Hines, for being a guest.
Thank you. It was an honor to share.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you for listening to the Power of Owning Your Career podcast. It is my hope that you enjoyed today's episode. You can check out the show notes for this episode on the SimoneMorrisEnterprises.org website by clicking the podcast menu. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and tell a friend or two about it.